Alright, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whenever you're watching the videos. I'm going to do something for um, the end of section 6.4, talking about comparing really the trial and error method to the AC method. Because trial and error lends itself well to certain circumstances, AC method lends itself well to certain circumstances as well. So let's take a look at something like this. We've got an example of x squared plus 3x plus 2. We're going to do that factorization using trial and error and AC method, and we'll see kind of which one has kind of better options. Um, if we take a look at what we've got, if I'm going to do the trial and error method, I'm going to say number one, we're going to make my life easy, is my trinomial in descending order, x squared, x to the first, x to the 0 power, yep, it's in descending order. Do I need to factor out a greatest common factor? There's no greatest common factor to factor out. Do I need to factor out a -1 here? Don't have to do that. So I can set up then, my next step would be to set up my skeleton of my factorization here. Alright, so if I'm going to set up my skeleton, I'm going to say, well, here's my A would go in here, here's my C factorization would go over here, and then we'd have to assign our signs. I've got a plus sign here or a sum. If there's a sum here, then these signs are the same, and it's determined by that. So we're going to add up to a positive number. So we're going to have a plus and a plus. All right, so now what do I have here for my A? My A is unwritten. It's a 1. So what's the factorization of 1? Well, it's 1 and 1. There's nothing else that can... You can't factor 1 any other way. The next thing we play with is factorization of C. Factorization of C is 2 is either 1 and 2 or 2 and 1. And we can put a 1 and a 2 here, and we should be done. So we can say that this is our factorization. If we can, I guess we can double check by foiling. 1x times 1x gives me just an x squared. I'm going to eliminate the 1 here. That's my first. Outside terms are 1x times 2 gives me plus 2x. Inside terms, 1 times 1x is 1x, or x. Last terms are 1 times 2 is 2. And we combine like terms, we get x squared plus 3x plus 2 is the same as what we started with. So yeah, you know what? There's our factorization. That's pretty much done. Alright, we should have taken a stopwatch and seen what happens with that. But let's try this same polynomial and use the AC method. And we'll say, well, step number 1, I guess, make our life easy. Greatest common factor, no. Descending order, 2, 1, 0, yes. Factor out a -1, nope. Alright, so then the next thing we do is we write our A equals 1, B equals 3, C equals 2. We don't necessarily have to do this, but it's something I can do. Here's an A times C equals 1 times 2 equals 2. We got to factor the 2. And it's either 1 and 2 or -1, -2. I guess we can do that. But we have to add up to a positive 3. So there's our factorization. So we have to rewrite 3x as 1x, or plus 1x, plus 2x. And then everything else stays the same. Here's my x squared, and here's my plus 2. And now we have to factor by grouping. So we have to group these two together. Don't know why that turned to purple, but here's a blue. Factor these two together and factor these last two together. Then we factor the blue, and we have to factor out a common factor between x squared and x. What would that factor out? I'm going to write in blue. Is my x times x. X squared divided by x is x. Plus 1x divided by x is plus 1. And now we're going to write in red what factors the greatest common factor between 2x and 2 is 2. So we factor out a plus 2 times 2x divided by 2 is x, plus 2 divided by 2 is plus 1, and my factor here and my factor here is great. Factor in the blue and factor of the red term is the same, so that's good. Now we can factor out an x plus 1. So we'll write in an x plus 1, and now we have to factor, we're factoring this out of each of these terms, so x times x plus 1 divided by x plus 1 gives me just x in parentheses. Plus 2 times x plus 1 divided by x plus 1 as the greatest common factor gives me just plus 2, and there's our factorization. So let's assume that that's our factorization. We need to double check by foiling. X times x gives me x squared. x times 2 is plus 2x, x 1 times x is plus 1x, 1 times 2 is plus 2, and we combine like terms. We got x squared plus 3x plus 2 is the same thing we started with. Alright, so our FOIL checks out, and there's our answer, and we're done. So, compare and contrast. Over here, trial and error went pretty smoothly because we had a prime number here for A, we had a prime number for C, and the prime number for A factored out to that. The prime number for for C factored out as 1 and 2. And there was a sum, so when there's a sum, it makes it a lot easier because either they're both positive or they're both negative. So my recommendation, I guess, if we have a prime number in either A or C, it's a lot easier to use the AC method because we don't have to worry about factoring that prime number. Here's a prime number, it's only 1, it can factor as 1 and 1. Here's a prime number, it can only factor as 1 and 2. If it's 7 or something like that, it's factor as 1 and 7. If there's a sum here, it makes it a lot easier as well. So any of those criteria, I guess, if there's a prime number for A, prime number for C, and or there's a plus sign right here, it's going to be probably a lot easier to factor using the trial and error method. When you get to something over here, something like this, even something simple like this that really factors into something pretty straightforward, using the AC method always works, but there's so many different ways you can make a mistake. Did I write things down correctly? Did I write it down in descending order? Is my A correct and my C correct? Did I multiply it together correctly? Did I factor it correctly? Did I write down these numbers correctly? Did I group these correctly? Did I factor this out correctly? Did I factor that out correctly? So many different ways that you can maybe, number one, take so many steps, and number two, better opportunities, I guess more opportunities for making mistakes. So for something simple like this, AC method might not be the best way to go. Just an observation. You can play around with it. I'm sure there's going to be a time when I'll ask you to only do trial and error. So, observation. Bring your observations, comments to class. We'll talk about them in class.